And we are live. Hello, thank
Awesome.
you, and welcome. This is Breezy Brown's Talk. I am Sherry, your host at Brown's Fangirl on X. Tonight is a very, very special night, not just because it's October, but family, are you in for a treat tonight? Please welcome my guest co host, Dave, at the Dave Mags on the X app. Um, he is going to share his story of being um, behind enemy lines and being a huge, huge Browns fan. To me, this is so exciting because, ew, Massachusetts, no offense,
None taken.
well, I'm not going to say trapped. I'm sure you had a great, like situation growing up and whatnot, but being a Browns fan behind enemy lines. And usually these kind of stories involve Steelers connections and whatnot, but yours to me is extremely unique. So I would like to hand you the talking stick if you would like to start at the beginning of
Abs-
your Browns fandom and how you had to tune out all the noise of the New England Patriots fans who surrounded you.
Absolutely, Sherry. And it's a pleasure to be on your show. Been pumped about this for since we talked a couple weeks back, and
Great.
yeah, there's no loose ends with the story. You were just mentioning the Steelers, and there is many connections in my
Of
journey
course.
with Steelers fans. Even today, they tend to always be there. At the worst
Always.
times, there's always a Steelers fan in my life. But
Always. They're like mosquitoes.
yeah, and I know a couple of my buddies, the cigar group, is probably
Sure.
listening. They're probably, I'm
I
sure,
see.
going
Caviar
to.
Hound.
There he is, one of my good buddies. Yeah, he's a Falcons fan, so he's all right. He's not too bad.
Okay. Okay.
But yeah, it's the Steelers. They're always they just always tend to be there. So, but going back, kind of how it all began. I grew up in Massachusetts, born and raised.
Sure.
My family were strict Italians. My old man was right off the boat,
Oh,
so
wow.
there wasn't a traditional sports, family sports viewing.
Right.
I grew up with basically the two sports that my old man liked to watch were boxing
Oh,
and professional wrestling. And at the time in
very
the
cool.
yeah, and in the early '80s, being in Massachusetts, boxing everywhere at that time was so dominant, and that's when those were the golden years of professional boxing,
Sure.
and you had boxers like Sugar Ray Leonard, Roberto Duran, you had Thomas Hearns, but locally, being in Massachusetts, and
Hmm.
he was an hour away, was the marvelous one, Marvin Hagler, who was
Oh,
like a
wow.
legend growing up. So boxing and pro wrestling were the sports. So I didn't know anything about football. I'm 7 or 8 years old at the time,
Mhm.
and I'm in school. It's Super Bowl time, and the Patriots are in there. 1986. The Patriots are playing the Chicago Bears, and I remember going to school, but right before that Super Bowl weekend, and everybody was, were in Patriots attire. I wasn't because my folks didn't follow football.
Right.
So, the teachers gave me a hard time. They're like,
I know, even
oh,
teachers.
brutal, just brutal. Sending, we sent
Oh, goodness.
notifications to your parents and stuff about wearing Patriots attire.
Right.
My mom, I mean, she didn't care about football. So, I went to school and
Well,
what I went to school in,
you
right?
summoned, you said pro wrestler, and look, you summoned one. Hi,
Hey,
Lou.
hey, Lou. Um, So yeah, and I remember that Sunday, Super Bowl Sunday. My mom and dad did put the game on because it was a Super Bowl, it was
Right.
entertainment. And all I remember, Sherry, is the Patriots got their butts handed to them from one side of the field to the other. The Chicago Bears that year and that Super Bowl, I mean, they just dominated the Patriots. So I'm looking at this team and I'm saying to myself, terrible. I mean, what did I miss, right? So didn't think anything of it. You know, as the year goes by, I'm kind of getting into baseball a little bit now. The Red Sox are in the World Series.
Right.
Celtics are probably the best team on the planet at that point, and the Boston Bruins were in the Stanley Cup.
Right.
So hockey, all of those three sports were very dominant
I'm
at a
guilty of being a hockey fan as well.
well, no, they're great. God bless. I as well. And so, at that window of time, it was the Celtics, it was the Bruins, it was the Red Sox, the Patriots were in my back, rear view. And I'll never forget that Christmas of 1987. I mean, excuse me, 1986. That Christmas, I got a small TV for my bedroom.
Oh,
And
everybody remembers the year they got the small TV. Yes.
right. And as you get to know, I'm a big TV guy, which
Sure. Yes, yes, you are. You have 3 TVs. Yes, I'm very impressed with your
right.
setup.
Thank you. And so, I'll never forget it. I had the TV, but we had the old rabbit ears, right, in the mid
Of
'80s.
course.
And so I just remember this Sunday in January. It was snowing back in Massachusetts. I was inside, obviously couldn't play. And I put the TV on, and it could only get a few channels at that time, right? With the rabbit ears.
Right. Mhm, mhm.
And there it was, Sherry. There it was. The Cleveland Browns against the Denver Broncos in
Wow.
Cleveland. And I just remember seeing, the Browns with Marty Schottenheimer as the
Sure.
coach, and the dark brown uniforms, and the orange helmets, and then the
Mhm.
Broncos. And I was just kind of amazed. And the Browns early on had a lead, and there was just something that captivated me with the Browns. So I'm like, okay, now I'm enjoying football, and that was a great game. The infamous drive.
Right.
Unfortunately, John Elway led the Broncos. They
Mhm.
won. They went on to the Super Bowl. Yada yada yada.
Right.
But I was hooked. I'm like, okay, so. That was it. I remember watching that Super Bowl. It was, I believe, the Broncos and Giants, I think, and which then was the first time I saw Bill Belichick as a defense
Oh,
under Parcells.
right.
And, Bill Belichick captivated me, and his defense was amazing. Lawrence Taylor, Pepper Johnson, Carl Banks. I mean, they were, amazing. So that following year, we're getting ready to approach football season. I'll never forget it. I'm food shopping with my mom, and I, remember, and I don't know. I'm in my mid 40s, so I don't know if
Mhm.
I'm updating myself. So many things have changed over the years, but in the supermarkets there were these gumball machines, right? They had
Oh,
the
come on. Even people way below the average age range. Come on. Who doesn't know? They still have them. They still have
okay.
them.
I'm not sure. I mean, now I live out in the woods. I don't see anything, but. Uh, Back then, I just remember seeing this one machine that had these small,
The tiny helmet machine.
the helmet machine, but there was also the tiny mug machine. Okay,
Oh,
these these little
wow.
these little mugs with the team's logos. So I need I need to try one of these machines. I want to get a mug. Okay, this is in I want to say the summer of '87, right? Summer of '87, I'll never forget it. I go, pop open, I get the egg, I take the egg, open up the plastic egg, and inside, my life would change.
Forever. Oh, there it is. It is an adorable, tiny ceramic Browns mug. It
To
is
this
so cute.
day, to this day, it stays with me.
So, would you consider that your prized Browns possession?
Yes, that thing's
Okay.
been with me through thick and thin. So I knew right then and there it was destiny, right?
I
So,
mean, what are the odds of that? And
right,
none
what are
of
the
you math people come at me and give me odds because that's not my strong suit. I went to school in South Florida. Teaching math was not their strong suit. So, phenomenal that that happened. That is a pivotal, pivotal life-changing experience in
yeah, the
all
universe
places.
Right, and then that was it. And the rest kind of just goes. The Browns again that year, division playoffs.
Right.
Lost to the Broncos again, but they were there. Another year goes by. They're in the playoffs. Meantime, as the Browns are right on the top of the mountain, they're right there with Denver, and the
Right.
Patriots are starting to dip and dip and dip. And I can remember 1990 going to school, and there was, back then you had, the infamous starter jackets, right? In the
Oh, of
wintertime, everyone,
course.
right? And the Patriots, I mean, kids in school, there were some kids like myself, they were wearing
Hmm.
Browns jerseys or Broncos jerseys or
Right.
Oilers. But the Patriots, because they were starting to become so bad, you know, people, kids, they jumped off the bandwagon.
Of
So
course. You
it
have to
was
find your way as a child and be, your own unicorn in a sense.
right, right. And it was enjoyable to have that pleasure to, okay, we're on top of the mountain right now. The Patriots are garbage. I mean,
Sorry about that. That was
no,
my phone. Stupid phone. Do go on.
and that there was that period of time where the Patriots were almost being moved out of New England. They
Hmm.
were going to probably head to St. Louis. The organization was a mess, and the Browns, we were in transition too in the early '90s, and then a gentleman came onto this team as their coach, and again that connection arrives with Bill Belichick, and I'm just like, man, things are going to get great again, right? We had a couple of bad years. Schottenheimer had
Hmm.
left, but Bill Belichick comes in, this defensive guru,
Right. Hmm.
and I was excited because I'm like, Belichick's he's the man. And then he brings in Nick Saban, which a lot of people might not know. Saban was the
Forget.
defensive
Right. I think
coordinator,
a lot of people forget that Nick Saban was part of
one
the
of his
situation. Hmm.
one of his first pro jobs, and it was some tough tracking with between the two, couple of years. Belichick, it wasn't the Bill Belichick that we're accustomed to now,
Right.
uh, but it's still I never left the Brown side, and even with the controversy with Vinny Testaverde coming in and replacing Bernie Kosar, and I know a lot of the locals there were
Sure.
were heartbroken, but we made it to the playoffs that year, and who did we beat in the playoffs that year? The New England Patriots, right?
So
We
I
took.
have to ask you, how did that feel?
Okay, so now I'm getting into my teens, right? So I'm going over friends' houses, and their parents are giving me hell. Get your Browns hat off, get your brown, and I just remember, just kind of like, yeah, you wait. Belichick's
Right.
gonna have these guys beating you guys,
Hmm.
and they did. And Parcells was then the coach for the Patriots, and but Belichick took them, and that was
Right.
it. And that kind of for me was an eye opener. That actual playoff game, because it was the first time where I'm interacting with my friends at home in Massachusetts. Them
Right.
being all back to diehard Patriots fans. Now, of course, now they're winning with Parcells as their coach. And I could start to see, like, now I'm a little bit older. I'm 14, 15, and I'm like, man, these guys are really rough on me. And and then it kind of continued, and unfortunately, they projected up with Parcells,
Sure.
and we started to come down a little bit, and at that point, Modell decides to move Cleveland to Baltimore, right?
Right. That
It's hard,
ugly, ugly part in history. Right.
and now I'm amongst my friends, and they're
Mhm.
all sky high because the Patriots, they got Bledsoe, they got a star quarterback. They're Super Bowl team, right? They go and play the Packers. Now, granted, they got their
Right.
butts kicked by
Right.
far than the Packers, but
But they
they're in
made it.
the
Yeah, they made it to
they
a
made
Super
it,
Bowl. Hmm.
and what do we have? We're now known as the Baltimore Ravens.
A
Heartbreaking.
heartbreak. So, how did that hit you as a kid in Massachusetts? How did you cope? What did you do for
Um,
those?
it was tough. A lot of times I didn't want to go to my friends' places, especially for sports and stuff. Like any of the big games, I didn't see my friends. I stayed home and watched the game,
Wow.
because all my friends were Patriots fans. Or, even I think during that Super Bowl, I had a girlfriend at that time, and she wouldn't let me go to her friend's place because she's like, "You're a Browns fan, you're not a Patriots fan. It's going to be awkward." Da, da, da,
Wow.
da. And
Yikes.
this would be the first time that I would have that happen to me. But
Sure.
we'll get into that. So yeah, it was tough. I only saw my friends during Red Sox games, Celtics games, and Bruins games, and even
Mhm.
then, the late '90s, those weren't the best years for the Celtics. Those were terrible years for the Red Sox as well. So it was tough. I didn't see a lot of my friends, right? So it started, and then kind of going forward,
Mhm.
the Browns get their team back, right? 1999,
Mhm.
the Browns come back, and here's a kind of a crazy another connection, as I call it, to a
Of
story.
course.
The Browns head coach on the when the Browns came back in the lead,
Mhm.
Coach Chris Palmer.
Mhm.
So Coach Palmer had roots in Massachusetts. He was the Patriots receivers and quarterback coach. I think he was there from 1993 to 1995,
Oh,
right?
okay. So a
So,
familiar name, a familiar product producer.
right. And the Chris Palmer story is that during his time with the Patriots, his son went to the same high school that I went to. He was a year older than me. And I'd probably say a handful of times, Coach Palmer came in, did presentations and
Oh,
speeches and
wow.
whatnot because his son was, a student
Sure.
there. So who ends up being that first coach to coach the returning Browns? Chris Palmer, right? Crazy. So,
And so
um,
did
you
he
know,
have a did you have was it a positive experience dealing with him?
he was always great. I mean, even if he was associated with the Patriots, he was always very cool with all the students, and he helped a lot
Did
with the
he
community, and he was
Sure.
great. I mean, Coach Palmer was, son was awesome, but it was just so ironic that it would be him to coach the
Right. So did you feel
and.
the Browns were in good hands with him?
Yeah, 1999, that first year. I mean, he needed, there was talent was a little bit
Sure.
shaky,
Mhm.
but I like Palmer. I thought he did a good job with the
Great.
Patriots at that point, so I was okay with him being the coach. Unfortunately, it wasn't the best of times. The first 2 years were really rough. Uh,
Right.
and during this time now, I'm going to getting ready to go away to college up in
Mhm.
northern Maine, and one of my
Wow.
closest friends, yeah, it was quite a adventure. One of my closest friends was going to school down in Miami, and in March of 2000, he's like, "Hey Dave," his name's also Dave, but he's like, "Hey Dave, why don't you come down on spring break, come down, hang out." Now, my buddy Dave down in Miami worked for the sports radio station down there.
Okay.
Dave was in with all the hurricanes back then.
Okay.
Okay,
It's
so
funny. That is interesting because I do have a hurricane connection of a football player who I grew up with who ended up being a Miami Hurricane and one of uh one of the most favored Patriots of I'm not going to say of all time. Vincent
okay,
Wilfork.
yeah, Vince Wilfork, yep,
We
yep.
went to middle school and high school together.
Wow,
He grew up
wow.
in Boynton
All right,
Beach, yeah, he grew
yep,
up in Boynton Beach, and he ended up at the U in
yeah,
Miami
yeah,
around
he
that
did.
time. Oh, maybe a little just slightly later, but yeah.
So it's a little bit slightly later, but in that squad of 99, 2000, who had Ed Reed was with the Ravens, right?
Right,
Uh,
right.
and Coach Ken Dorsey was on that team. Okay. So I remember being out with my buddy Dave, and we're at some sports place having a bite to
Mhm.
eat. And all of a sudden he's like, and he, my nickname was Mags, right? So he's like, Mags, Coach Davis just walked in, Coach Butch Davis. So I'm like, Dave, he's with his family. I said, let him be. But my buddy Dave, very loud guy. So he was like, Coach. Here's my buddy, Dave from Massachusetts is here, and he was very polite. Shook my hand. I said, congratulations on a great season. Awesome guy, right?
That's
So
wonderful.
the next year, the Browns fire Coach Palmer, and who
Mhm.
they hire? Coach Butch Davis from the Hurricanes. So now Coach Davis, who I just met a year prior, is
Mhm.
now coaching the Browns. And
Really?
just felt like that connection with the Browns were always there. Like these people that I met always end up going to the Browns.
I
And
feel if you meet or hang out with any said coach, at some point they might end up the head coach of the Cleveland Browns.
right, true story. And it was just wild. And,
That is awesome.
Coach Davis, I mean, man, I thought he did a good job with Cleveland. That the defense was pretty good then in the
Mhm.
early 2000s. We ended up going to the playoffs under him, facing the Steelers. Um,
Oh,
and,
those
and
pesky Steelers. Yeah.
right, and one of my good friends up in Maine at the time when I was there was a huge Steelers fan, and I just remember going over his house, watching the Steelers game. He was a diehard Steelers fan, me being a diehard Browns fan, and Sherry got ugly.
Oh
Obviously,
no, really?
it wasn't a pleasant
Yikes.
sight. Both, we're still friends today, so which is a good thing. But yeah, the Browns, tough loss,
Mhm.
and then unfortunately, this is where the world changes because, as you know, early 2000s, the Browns start going into a dark period.
Oh no.
And
Right.
right, early 2000s, after that playoff run, it's getting bad. And the Patriots end up becoming this juggernaut. Tom Brady, becomes this boy wonder. I mean,
Right.
I Brady. When I saw him play in Michigan, I said, you know what, Brady's going to be a solid quarterback in this league. Did anyone ever predict what he became? Who knows?
I don't.
But it's crazy. But Brady was just the man, and Belichick.
Right.
He's there, and I knew. I said, if there's a guy to get this team together, it's Bill Belichick. I
Mhm.
love Bill. I still do. I love Bill Belichick, and that was it. Then it started, and I ended up moving back to Massachusetts in the period of 2004, and they had just won their second Super Bowl, and we weren't very good. Browns, we weren't good, and the Patriots were
Mhm.
amazing, and
Right.
you know what happened then. And next year, they play in the Eagles.
Mhm.
Patriots win the Super Bowl again. And it was tough. It was, a lot of my friends, were living large, being Patriots fans. And, me being a Browns fan, what could I do?
A lot of
And
adversity for you to overcome. That must have been
it was
uncomfortable hanging out with your friends and
and it was tough, and it was almost the same circle of friends that I dealt with when they were going to the Super Bowl against the Packers in 95, 96. Now, 10 years later, it's the same group, and
right.
they just egging me on. The parents 10 years older egging me on,
Still the
and
parents,
yeah,
jeez.
just giving it to me, and I'm just like, man, have a little love here.
Mhm.
So it was rough. And from there, the Browns didn't get any better.
Mhm.
Coach changes, right? Romeo Crennel, and here comes now the Patriots connection again.
Mhm.
Crennel comes in as a Patriots coach. He's terrible. Romeo Crennel, one of the worst coaches, in my opinion, in the NFL. It's just horrible. And
Gotcha.
then from Crennel, we get into the, '07, '08, '09. Eric Mangini comes aboard. He's coaching the Brown, an ex-Patriot under Bill Belichick. terrible. And the Patriots, what are
No
they doing? Just they're winning. And if they're not
winning.
in the Super Bowl, they still provided their fan base, which were
Hmm.
all my friends, a great season. They had Brady there, and it was tough. A lot of my friends too. They didn't want to be. If they had big Patriots games, I wasn't invited.
Oh
Um,
wow,
yeah,
that
yeah. They
is awful. They
well they
exclude. You
they
can still
excluded.
enjoy the game of football.
Well,
Wow.
they called me a jinx, Sherry, because of the one Super Bowl party I hosted was the Patriots New York Giants Super Bowl. And look, I even myself thought Patriots should take the Giants easily. And you
Hmm.
know what happened in that Super Bowl?
Hmm.
And my friends were like, "It's because of you. You
Oh,
hosted
geez.
this." Yeah, and that was
There's
it.
no way. That
Yeah, it was brutal.
that
It was
is
brutal.
awful. I hope you found new friends. Jeez.
Well, in a way, I kind of had to,
Of
but I
course.
know that night when the Giants beat them, I felt peace.
Okay,
Because
good. Good. I'm
you
glad you
know,
got a little bit of peace out of that situation because
yeah,
wow.
and that was when I really started to realize I'm like, I hate these guys. Like the Patriots really have lit this fire in me where I'm like, I despise them. Yeah, I'm losing my friends because of it.
Mhm.
I'm not enjoying football, and Massachusetts, especially like that area. I mean, I was only about a half hour from Foxborough where the Patriots play.
Wow. So
Yeah,
close to
so
ground
close,
zero. That is
close to ground zero.
awful.
Numerous times I actually had to enter ground zero and go to a couple of games with, whether it was various work events or
Mhm.
various girlfriends or what have you.
Mhm.
And it was just terrible. And I'm still recovering from those moments.
That's a lot
So
of PTSD to deal with.
yeah,
That is
plenty,
heavy.
which
Jeez.
is probably explains why now I live in the middle of nowhere out in the woods. But um, yeah, and it was just tough. And being a Browns fan, it wasn't again 2010, 2011. We're in some dark times, man. And
Right.
the Patriots is just they're winning. I mean, even the year that Brady got hurt,
Right.
um, I'm like, they're not going to be that good. They still were solid. I mean, Matt Castle. I mean, I don't know how he did it, but they found ways to win. And it wasn't until an infamous game with, I'm sure he's a legend around
Mhm.
Cleveland. He's a legend in Arkansas. One Peyton Hillis,
Okay.
who on this, I think it was 2011, um, ran roughshod over the Patriots with Colt McCoy
Right. Okay.
was the QB. I forget who was coaching the Browns at that point, but I just remember Peyton Hillis was a video game, a cheat code. I mean, he was just all over the page, and I was, now it's that era where you can text, with texting, right?
Mhm.
2011,
Mhm.
and I'm sending these, my buddies there texts. I'm like, how do you guys like us now, right? Because again, they wouldn't
Right.
let me watch the game with them. They wouldn't come to my place. I wasn't allowed to go to their place. So I'm watching this game, and I'm like, oh, this feels good. Feels damn good because the Patriots, I think, were big time favored to win that game, and the Browns just owned them. So that was a nice little bright spot in what was still a terrible period of time for us Browns.
Uh-huh. Mhm.
And yes, that was how Peyton Hillis won that cover that year. A lot of people, some people, forget that, but
Oh
good
man.
memory.
Thank you,
Yep,
Posh. Thanks for bringing that
Josh,
up.
killing it, Posh. Yeah, and Peyton Hillis, who's a legend here in Arkansas, went to Razorback, rugged quarterback. I mean, excuse me, rugged, great running back.
Mhm.
Um, Injuries kind of shortened his career, but so yeah, and as time went on, the Browns were just, they were hurting. It was tough,
Yeah.
and we had some bright spots, Sherry, with Josh Gordon.
Right, of course.
You remember Josh Gordon, how
Of
nasty he
course.
was. But unfortunately,
Kept getting
well,
dinged. Oh, Josh Gordon. Yes, we still love
he
him. Mm-hmm.
stay out of his own way. He was so talented,
Mm-hmm.
and he just couldn't. Off the field issues, um, unfortunately, kind of shortened his career. But Josh Gordon, I mean, I think it was 2013. He had a season, and I don't know if I'm allowed to bring this name up. Please ban me from the show if you have to.
Never ever.
Um, and I apologize. I was a big fan of his. Johnny Manziel.
That's
Um,
okay. He had flair, he had zazz, he had pizzazz and panache, all the words that mean, the
right.
exact same thing. I could understand how one could become a fan of him. See, this was before my Browns fandom, but I did know of him because of the spotlight that they put on him and the microscope they put under him or him
Yeah. Yeah.
underneath. So, no hatred toward him. I mean, everybody has a controversial player that they like,
Right.
and there's no shame in that
Yeah.
whatsoever.
Yeah. Manziel. When the Browns drafted him, I'm like, all right, this could be good.
What will
But
he do?
unfortunately, he had his own off the field issues as
Uh-huh.
well, and didn't want to read a playbook. And he still wanted to be a 20-year-old in a professional league.
Right. Mhm.
And unfortunately, Manziel was just one of the numerous quarterbacks that we had, that just failed
Mhm.
upon failed upon failed. And it didn't get any easier. We go into that what was it, 1-15 season, followed by an 0
Right.
and 7 season.
That's right when I joined the
And
conversation and got season tickets and then was smart enough to renew them because winning one game, you have to get better the following season, right?
that's what they say, and that would be logic, but not our Browns, Sherry, not our Browns.
It was very exciting pain. It was new. It was new.
Hmm.
I didn't know that sports could inflict this level of anxiety and depression in people until I moved to Cleveland, but it restored my hope for every season moving forward that we have to be better than where we were.
Right. I mean, that was rock bottom, so we couldn't
Yeah,
get any worse than those 2 seasons. Absolutely. And
they do defy logic,
they,
and
they do, Ethan. Yeah.
you are
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah. And that brings us to an Oklahoma Sooner. I'm a big Oklahoma Sooner guy.
Yeah.
Um, they were one of the first teams that I saw for college football. Being a
Hmm.
kid, Sooners, Barry Switzer, they were just running roughshod off everybody in the
Hmm.
mid to late '80s. So I became a Sooners fan. That was that. Enter Baker Mayfield. So I'm like, you know what? Baker Mayfield's going to make us forget about Johnny Manziel. Baker, it was, he was a class act, a football guy, talented,
Right.
number one pick. I'm like, finally, we got our guy. I was so excited. And I remember just throwing it in the face of all my friends, Patriots fans, because Patriots then you could start to see they were missing on draft picks. They ended up passing on Lamar Jackson that
Right.
draft. They ended up drafting the kid from Georgia, offensive tackle, who I can't stay in the league. Is always hurt.
Mm,
Um, and the Browns, I'm like, this is it. We had just drafted Myles Garrett the year
right.
prior,
That was
and
very exciting.
Njoku, and I'm
Hmm.
like, have some pieces here. And Baker's going to come in. He's that leader, that right guy for this locker room. And we had hope. And I know there was that infamous first game that Baker comes in, the Bud Light
Yeah,
game, as you
that
call it in
was.
Cleveland.
Yep, that was the pivotal game for me. And we're just going to take a very, very quick break to get a word from our sponsors. Okay, thank you so much. Yes, the Baker era. Love it or hate it, It happened. It's part of our history. It's part of the rich tapestry of being a Browns fan. It did he reignite the flames of hope for
I
everybody? Or well,
yeah,
maybe
I
not
think he did,
everybody, but a good bunch of us.
right? Yeah, he you know, I mean Baker, I mean brought us to the playoff run, right? During
Right.
the 2020 season, and we take
Hey,
out the
Ellis.
Steelers and hey Ellis, and Ben Roethlisberger,
Hmm.
head down. They put some weapons around Baker with Landry, and I
Yes.
believe L was on that
Yes,
team, and
he
Austin
was.
Hooper.
Hmm.
I'm like, I think we're on the right projection. And now I'm rubbing it in the faces of the Patriots, all my friends who are Patriots fans, because Brady's
Good.
gone. I mean, they let Brady go like he was a piece of trash. And
Hmm.
that's where, that hate kind of evolves, because I'm like, you couldn't have signed Brady and let him finish his career. Like,
Right.
Kraft. So, Brady leaving, fuck, New England,
Hmm.
that was just the start. And then they're bringing in Cam Newton, who was, kind of past his time, past, his best days. And the
Right.
Patriots were
Hmm.
starting to be pitiful. And here we are, the Browns. We made it to the playoffs. We
Hmm.
beat the Steelers. Hey, people
That.
forget, we
Do you
came close.
remember how good that felt beating the Steelers?
Oh, it
On
was
on
great.
sad days, do you bring that back up into your memory? I know
Oh,
I do.
always. I mean, I
I'm
rewatched that
happy for
game.
Baker too. I know
Yeah,
a lot of people like to make it negative, but he matured and you got to let the baby bird fly, right?
right. And Baker, I mean, he was great. He almost beat KC. I mean,
Right.
we came that close. I mean, Baker looked good. And Ethan, I agree. Oh, Mac Jones, when now leading with the Patriots, when
Mhm.
Mac Jones got drafted, here they go in Foxborough. Oh, Mac Jones is going to be better than Brady. Mac Jones is this Alabama legend.
Mhm. Mhm.
Mac,
Mhm.
Patriots are going to win Super Bowls. Your Browns suck. Blah 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 blah. I'm like, Mac Jones was stiff as a doornail. I mean,
Mhm.
I didn't see anything. This aura about Mac Jones. I didn't see it. And the Patriots, I mean, he wasn't the answer. And I just remember, at that point, I think I'd moved down to Florida, and they had made a big deal of the Tampa Bay Bucks with Brady, right? I think they had just come off their Super Bowl victory against, the Patriots with young Mac Jones. And
Right. Mhm.
it was, I'm like, this kid is not that good. And
Mm.
then the Patriots started to, really push all their coaches, all of Bill's boys. Matt Patricia coaching their offense. He's a
Right.
defensive guy.
Mhm.
Not a big fan of him. He's a horrible coach.
Mhm.
And he comes and just crushes that kid's career. I mean, Mac Jones was already, I didn't think he was that great. Patricia put a nail in his coffin in his career, basically. And the Patriots, terrible. But Baker, his last year in Cleveland, it was tough to see. He separated shoulder.
Yeah,
It wasn't
that was
pretty, Sherry.
awful. Yeah, that I mean, uh like Ellis just said, we kind of gave up on him way too soon. I mean, not necessarily us collectively, but the brass and
Yep.
um those fans unfortunately have very little say in all of that, but I feel that way too. I feel I know people get nasty about all this stuff and he's gone and he's not going to come back, but I agree. I think we did give up on him way too soon.
I mean, he had a separated shoulder that year, and you had Odell Beckham, and his dad was complaining, right? His
That
dad
was
was
weird. Yeah, that was weird.
causing
That was a
friction.
bunch of weirdness. Mhm.
Right, Beckham should have been gone before. Like Beckham should have been gone at the trade deadline.
Right.
Because you could tell he was miserable, he was hurt, this that, and I'm like, you got to get rid of Beckham. Then Baker's going out there, separated shoulder. It was rough. And then, you were in that era with COVID, and,
Right. Oh man, was that terrible? Mm-hmm.
it was a Nick Mullins in there on the Christmas Eve game, I think it was.
Right.
Those
Mm-hmm.
games at the end of the season. And then, Baker coming back might have been, and I apologize, might have been the one of the games that we needed to win that season and get in the
Mm-hmm.
playoffs and throw out Nick Mullins. And then, Baker comes back. I think it was the Christmas game against Green Bay, and he's just not right. And whether he's unhappy, the conflict in the locker room. I mean, at that point, you kind of felt bad for Baker in a
Mm-hmm.
way. Just this. It was everything was kind of coming to an end. The vibe was
Right.
there, and the brass did what they thought. I love Baker. I mean, obviously, an Oklahoma guy.
Right.
And yeah, Ethan, you're right. Unfortunately, he threw 4 picks that night.
Yeah, what
Um,
happens?
it happens. It wasn't pretty. I still, and I said it. I was watching with my buddy, who's a
Mhm.
Bear fan. This is in Florida, so I'm not
Oh,
dealing.
okay. Yeah, it's all a mishmash in Florida of all sorts
Right.
of fandom from everywhere people retired and grew up from and moved from and right.
Exactly, exactly. And except you don't see any Jacksonville Jaguars fans down there, though, right? Nobody knows that they're a Jaguar fan.
Nobody's claiming the Jaguars.
No,
Not
no
even
Jaguars. No,
Jacksonville.
the Jaguars. But yeah, it was this time, and it was heartbreaking.
Mhm.
To see, you already heard the rumblings that they were shopping Baker around, they weren't going to sign him, whatnot,
Mhm.
and we kind of know what happened to the rest, at that point. But and even knowing Baker was going and they were moving on from Baker, I still stayed. Being a Browns fan would never change,
Right.
regardless. And my hatred for the Patriots always stood, and to this day stays strong because, they pushed pushing Mac Jones
Right.
on the
They
Patriots. He
sure
was trash.
did. Wow. They pushed him heavy. Poor
And
kid.
I remember NBC, some of these big primetime games,
Mhm.
Patriots, and then even I think it was last year, the Brady game where he returns to Foxborough, and it's the
Right.
Patriots against the Eagles, and I'm just like, this kid stinks. He's just no good, and the Patriots lost, and they were awful last year, and which was awesome to see. And my friends received texts upon text to hear my happiness on how much I despise them and how poorly the Patriots were. So,
Right.
and here we are again. The Browns were amazing last year, right? I mean, even
Oh,
with injuries,
absolutely.
Joe Flacco comes in, who was a Patriots killer all most of his career. So it was great to see him come in, and he looked great, and his connection with Mari Cooper
Mhm.
and David Njoku. Um, it was a tough finish to the season, unfortunately, in the playoffs. The
Right.
Texans are a good young team, and all right, well, Texans are going to be there, and Texans, will be there, I think, at the end of the season. But and it brings us to modern time, and the chaos that we're dealing with at the start of the season. But I love
Yeah.
the Browns, and you love your Browns, and
Of
uh,
course.
regardless, So yeah, it's just through the good and the bad, and we've seen a lot of it. Uh,
Absolutely.
the orange and brown, bleed strong.
Right. So, how does your fandom go over in Arkansas?
So, I've the last few years, I got into real estate and flipping houses,
Sure.
and my journey started in northern New Hampshire, and during the pandemic, 2020, and from there, I took my first home, and then moved down to Florida, and it wasn't until I got down to Florida
Mhm.
that I'm wearing my Baker jersey and my Miles Garrett jerseys, and everybody's,
Right.
wait a minute, you know, how are you a Browns fan, right? And
Mhm.
then they sense my accent, and they're like,
I was just gonna ask you, they hear the accent and
the R's are enhanced, right? And
mhm.
um, I'm like, well, I'm from Massachusetts, but I hate the Patriots, and I'm a Browns fan. And I tell them the story,
Hmm.
the infamous playoff game against the Broncos, and and then being an Oklahoma guy, and
Right.
Baker being with
So
the
that was a
Browns.
double, that was like a double whammy. That was like a double stuffed Oreo for you of happiness. And well,
Yeah,
I mean, I feel it's very ebb and flow being a Browns fan, as we all have experienced. But yeah.
right, and that's a good way to put it, Sherry. Ebb and flow, absolutely. And I mean, even now, I spent 2 years in Oklahoma. I flipped a couple of places there,
Sure.
and again, how are you, not a Cowboys fan or a Houston Texans fan? How are you a Browns fan? And I explained. And then moving to Arkansas, same thing. You see a lot of Cowboys fans,
Hmm.
Houston Texans. And here I am running around the stores and local spots where my Browns attire, and
Right.
they look already, and then once they hear me talk, they're like, wait a
That
minute,
doesn't make
how,
sense.
what,
Hmm.
and yeah, I've been living with it. It's been basically the last few years everywhere I go. And I always represent, and I'm proud of being a Browns fan, and no matter what, the good and the bad, I bleed the orange and brown.
So do you go back to Massachusetts? Do you still have family in the region over there in Massachusetts? No.
No, no family left, just good friends, and we go back and forth with them and the Patriots and
Uh-huh.
the Browns. Neither of us can really say much.
Right.
Terrible, and I love it. I mean, look, I think we get some, the injuries start to diminish on the offensive line.
Mhm.
Conklin back, and Wills Jr. comes back, and Chubb's coming back this week, right? We can hope. And
Well, he started practicing today, so that gives us hope for the future. Absolutely.
I think the Browns going to be all right. The defense is still so talented, and
For sure. Mhm.
I think we'll be okay. I don't know if we're gonna, be a Super Bowl contender, but I think we'll be competitive. At Watson, I'm not gonna touch that topic.
Yeah, I don't. It is complicated, extremely complicated.
And personally, I've never been a fan of him since seeing him at Clemson. But regardless, I think if Miles Garrett can stay healthy and Chubb can come back and they can
Mhm.
start to, maybe let Ken Dorsey do a couple of things. Stefanski. I love him. He's a great presence right in the
Mhm.
locker. Great coach. He's calm, and but you gotta let Dorsey cook a little bit. And if we can maybe run the ball a little more with Jerome Ford, Deontay Foreman, Chubb's coming back. Get the ball out to Judy a little more. I think we'll be okay. I mean, I don't know if we're going to be in the Super Bowl, but I think we'll be a competitive team. And the Patriots, they're pure trash. Don't see them. I don't think they win a game. They got lucky with Cincinnati, but Cincinnati couldn't stop an old lady crossing a walkway. You know what I mean? Terrible. And how the Patriots won that game, I don't know. But I don't see the Patriots winning anything else the rest of the season. I hate them. So
I would have never I would have never guessed. I would have never guessed that you hate them. That I would have not gotten that as the
I
takeaway.
just I despise them.
Well, that is passionate. I really respect your journey. Thank you so much for sharing, and especially sharing your tiny mug. To me, I am a weirdo, and just tiny things. See, that is
The mug.
again the magic mug. The magic.
Yeah,
Who
made
needs
it
a
all
victory? Who needs a victory Monday mug when you have the charm machine
right
mug
from
of
1986.
glory
Yeah, absolutely.
leading the Browns all the way to the Super Bowl?
Right.
I think. And we're getting close to an hour, so I think we're going to wrap it up. I would like to thank you so much, Dave Maggs, for sharing your story with us. It's been phenomenal on the Fanatical Elves Network, part of Fans First Sports Network. And is there anything you'd like to plug? Do you
Nope. Just let's hope the Browns can turn it around and
yeah.
be competitive and not make this a dark season for us.
Exactly. We need all the positivity and light we can get. So, on
Absolutely.
that, we're going to take that positivity. We're going to, envelop ourselves in it and Have a wonderful rest of your week onto the weekend, and a hearty go Browns to everybody.
Go
We're
Browns.
going to Washington. We're going to go in with fire and bring home a W for Cleveland.
Absolutely.
Exactly. So we hate the Patriots. Number one takeaway, go Browns as always.
Absolutely.
And everybody have a wonderful night.
All right, guys.
Thanks for joining.
Thank you, Sherry.
Of course.